Hey, welcome back to Yehusha's Glory. We are in the book of Jasher. We are going to start chapter 14, page 324 in the Sefer. We just got done, the very final thing we read last time was that Yahuwah appeared to Abram and promised him the land that he was going to give him in Canaan. And so here we start chapter 14. In those days there was in the land of Shinar a wise man who had understanding and all wisdom, and of a beautiful appearance, but he was poor and indigent. His name was Rikayon, and he was hard set to support himself, and he resolved to go to Mitzrayim to Osiris, the son of Anamim, king of Mitzrayim, to show the king his wisdom, for perhaps he might find grace in his sight to raise him up and give him maintenance. And Rikayon did so. And when Rikayon came to Mitzrayim, he asked the inhabitants of Mitzrayim concerning the king. And the inhabitants of Mitzrayim told him the custom of the king of Mitzrayim. For it was then the custom of the king of Mitzrayim that he went from his royal palace and was seen abroad only one day in the year. And after that, the king would return to his palace to remain there. And on the day when the king went forth, he passed judgment in the land, and everyone having a suit came before the king that day to obtain his request. And when Rikayon heard of the custom of Mitzrayim, and that he could not come into the presence of the king, he grieved greatly and was very sorrowful. And in the evening Rikayon went out and found a house in ruins, formerly a bakehouse in Mitzrayim, and he abode there all night in bitterness of soul, and pinched with hunger, and sleep was removed from his eyes. Rikayon considered within himself what he should do in the town until the king made his appearance, and how he might maintain himself there. And he rose in the morning and walked about, and met in his way those who sold vegetables and various sorts of seed with which they supplied the inhabitants. And Rikayon wished to do the same in order to get a maintenance in the city, but he was unacquainted with the custom of the people, and he was like a blind man among them. And he went and obtained vegetables to sell them for his support, and the rabble assembled about him and ridiculed him, and took his vegetables from him, and left him nothing. And he rose up from there in bitterness of soul, and went sighing to the bakehouse in which he had remained all the night before, and he slept there the second night. And on that night again he reasoned within himself how he could save himself from starvation, and he devised a scheme how to act. And he rose up in the morning and acted ingeniously, and went and hired 30 strong men of the rabble, carrying their war instruments in their hands, and he led them to the top of the Mitzrayim sepulchre, and he placed them there. And he commanded them, saying, Thus says the king, strengthen yourselves and be valiant men, and let no man be buried here until 200 pieces of silver be given, and then he may be buried. And those men did according to the order of Rikayon to the people of Mitzrayim the whole of that year. And in 8 months' time, Rikayon and his men gathered great riches of silver and gold, and Rikayon took a great quantity of horses and other animals, and he hired more men, and he gave them horses, and they remained with him. And when the year came around, at the time the king went forth into the town, all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim assembled together to speak to him and concerning the work of Rikayon and his men. And the king went forth on the appointed day, and all the Mitzrayim came before him and cried unto him, saying, May the king live forever. What is this thing you do in the town to your servants, not to suffer a dead body to be buried until so much silver and gold be given? Was there ever the like unto this done in the whole earth from the days of former kings, yea, even from the days of Adam until this day, that the dead should not be buried only for a set price? We know it to be the custom of kings to take a yearly tax from the living, but you do not only do this, but from the dead also you exact a tax day by day. Now, O king, we can no more bear this, for the whole city is ruined on this account. And do you not know it? And when the king heard all this they had spoken, he was very wroth, and his anger burned within him at this affair, for he had known nothing of it. And the king said, When and where is he that dares to do this wicked thing in my land without my command? Surely you will tell me. And they told him all the works of Riccon and his men, and the king's anger was aroused, and he ordered Riccon and his men to be brought before him. And Riccon took about 1,000 children, sons and daughters, and clothed them in silk and embroidery, and he set them upon horses and sent them to the king by means of his men. And he also took a great quantity of silver and gold and precious stones, and a strong and beautiful horse as a present for the king, with which he came before the king and bowed down to the earth before him. And the king, his servants, and all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim wondered at the work of Riccon, and they saw his riches and the present that he had brought to the king. And it greatly pleased the king, and he wondered at it. And when Riccon sat before him, the king asked him concerning all his works, and Riccon spoke all his words wisely before the king, his servants, and all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim. When the king had heard the words of Riccon and his wisdom, Riccon found grace in his sight, and he met with grace and kindness from all the servants of the king and from all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim on account of his wisdom and excellent speeches. And from that time they loved him exceedingly. And the king answered and said to Riccon, "Your name shall no more be called Riccon, but Pharaoh shall be your name, since you did exact a tax from the dead." And he called his name Pharaoh. And the king and his subjects loved Riccon for his wisdom, and they consulted with all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim to make him a prefect, under the king. And all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim and its wise men did so, and it was made a law in Mitzrayim. And they made Riccon Pharaoh prefect under Osiris, king of Mitzrayim, and Riccon Pharaoh governed over Mitzrayim, daily administering justice to the whole city. But Osiris the king would judge the people of the land one day in the year when he went out to make his appearance. And Riccon Pharaoh cunningly usurped the government of Mitzrayim, and he exacted a tax from all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim. And all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim greatly loved Riccon Pharaoh, and they made a decree to call every king that reigned over them and their seed in Mitzrayim Pharaoh. Therefore all the kings that reigned in Mitzrayim from that time forward were called Pharaoh unto this day. Okay, now here's a side note. On account of famine in Canaan, Abram, this is what's coming up. Abram goes to Mitzrayim, tells the people that Sarai is his sister on account of her beauty. Pharaoh desires to take her, but is prevented by an angel of Yehusha. The truth is made known, and Sarai is restored in Abram with many presents. Abram returns to his home. Trouble between Lot and Abram on account of Lot's cattle, and then Lot removes to Sedom. Okay, so here we are, chapter 15, page 326, the Sefer, book of Jasher. And in that year there was a heavy famine throughout the land of Canaan, and the inhabitants of the land could not remain on account of the famine, for it was very grievous. And Abram and all belonging to him rose and went down to Mitzrayim on account of the famine. And when they were at the brook Mitzrayim, they remained there some time to rest from the fatigue of the road. And Abram and Sarai were walking at the border of the brook Mitzrayim, and Abram beheld his woman Sarai, that she was very beautiful. And Abram said to his woman Sarai, "Since Elohim has created you with such a beautiful countenance, I am afraid of the Mitzrayim, lest they should slay me and take you away, for the fear of Elohim is not in these places. Surely then you shall do this. Say you are my sister to all that may ask you, in order that it may be well with me, and that we may live and not be put to death." And Abram commanded the same to all those who came with him to Mitzrayim on account of the famine. Also his nephew Lot he commanded, saying, "If the Mitzrayim ask you concerning Sarai, say she is the sister of Abram." And yet with all these orders Abram did not put confidence in them, but he took Sarai and placed her in a chest and concealed it amongst their vessels. For Abram was greatly concerned about Sarai on account of the wickedness of the Mitzrayim. And Abram and all belonging to him rose up from the brook Mitzrayim and came to Mitzrayim, and they had scarcely entered the gates of the city when the guards stood up to them, saying, "Give tithe to the king from what you have, and then you may come into the town." And Abram and those that were with him did so. And Abram with the people that were with him came to Mitzrayim. And when they came, they brought the chest in which Sarai was concealed, and the Mitzrayim saw the chest. And the king's servants approached Abram, saying, What have you here in this chest that we have not seen? Now open you the chest, and give tithe to the king of all that it contains. And Abram said, This chest I will not open, but all you demand upon it I will give. And Pharaoh's officers answered Abram, saying, It is a chest of precious stones. Give us the tenth thereof. Abram said, All that you desire I will give, but you must not open that chest. And the king's officers pressed Abram, and they reached the chest and opened it with force. And they saw and beheld a beautiful woman was in the chest. When the officers of the king beheld Sarai, they were struck with admiration at her beauty. And all the princes and servants of Pharaoh assembled to see Sarai, for she was very beautiful. And the king's officers ran and told Pharaoh all that they had seen, and they praised Sarai to the king. And Pharaoh ordered her to be brought. And the woman came before the king, and Pharaoh beheld Sarai, and she pleased him exceedingly, and he was struck with her beauty. And the king rejoiced greatly on her account, and made presents to those who brought him the tidings concerning her. And the woman was then brought to Pharaoh's house, and Abram grieved on account of his woman, and he prayed to Yehusha to deliver her from the hands of Pharaoh. And Sarai also prayed at that time and said, O Yahuwah Elohim, you did tell my lord Abram to go from his land and from his father's house to the land of Canaan. And you did promise to do well with him if he would perform your commands. Now behold, we have done that which you did command us. And we left our land and our families, and we went to a strange land and to a people whom we have not known before. And we came to this land to avoid the famine, and this evil accident has befallen me. Now therefore, O Yahuwah Elohim, deliver us and save us from the hand of this oppressor, and do well with me for the sake of your mercy. And Yahuwah hearkened to the voice of Sarai, and Yahuwah sent an angel to deliver Sarai from the power of Pharaoh. And the king came and sat before Sarai, and behold, an angel of Yahuwah was standing over them, and he appeared to Sarai and said to her, Do not fear, for Yahuwah has heard your prayer. And the king approached Sarai and said to her, What is that man to you who brought you hither? And she said, He is my brother. And the king said, It is incumbent upon us to make him great, to elevate him, and to do unto him all the good which you shall command us. And at that time the king sent to Abram silver and gold and precious stones in abundance, together with cattle, men servants, and maid servants. And the king ordered Abram to be brought. And he sat in the court of the king's house, and the king greatly exalted Abram on that night. And the king approached to speak to Sarai, and he reached out his hand to touch her, when the angel smote him heavily, and he was terrified, and he refrained from reaching to her. And when the king came near to Sarai, the angel smote him to the ground, and acted thus to him the whole night. And the king was terrified. And the angel on that night smote heavily all the servants of the king, and his whole household on account of Sarai, and there was a great lamentation that night amongst the people of Pharaoh's house. And Pharaoh, seeing the evil that befell him, said, Surely, on account of this woman has this thing happened to me. And he removed himself at some distance from her, and spoke pleasing words to her. And the king said to Sarai, Tell me, I pray you, concerning the man with whom you came here. And Sarai said, This man is my man. And I said to you that he was my brother, for I was afraid lest you should put him to death through wickedness. And the king kept away from Sarai, and the plagues of the angel of Yahuwah ceased from him and his household. And Pharaoh knew that he was smitten on account of Sarai, and the king was greatly astonished at this. And in the morning the king called for Abram and said to him, What is this you have done to me? Why did you say, She is my sister, owing to which I took her unto me to be my woman, and this heavy plague has therefore come upon me and my household? Now therefore, here is your woman, take her and go from our land, lest we all die on her account. And Pharaoh took more cattle, men servants and maid servants, and silver and gold to give to Abram, and he returned unto him Sarai his woman. And the king took a maiden, whom he begat by his concubines, and he gave her to Sarai for a handmaid. And the king said to his daughter, It is better for you, my daughter, to be a handmaid in this man's house than to be mistress in my house, after we have beheld the evil that befell us on account of this woman. And Abram arose, and he and all belonging to him went away from Mitzrayim, and Pharaoh ordered some of his men to accompany him and all that went with him. And Abram returned to the land of Canaan, to the place where he had made the altar, where he at first had pitched his tent. And Lot, the son of Haran, Abram's brother, had a heavy stock of cattle, flocks, and herds and tents, for Yehusha was bountiful to them on account of Abram. And when Abram was dwelling in the land, the herdsmen of Lot quarreled with the herdsmen of Abram, for the property was too great for them to remain together in the land, and the land could not bear them on account of their cattle. And when Abram's herdsmen went to feed their flock, they would not go into the fields of the people of the land, but the cattle of Lot's herdsmen did otherwise, for they were suffered to feed in the fields of the people of the land. And the people of the land saw this occurrence daily, and they came to Abram and quarreled with him on the account of Lot's herdsmen. And Abram said to Lot, "What is this you are doing to me, to make me despicable to the inhabitants of the land, that you order your herdsmen to feed your cattle in the fields of other people? Do you not know that I am a stranger in this land amongst the children of Canaan, and why will you do this unto me?" And Abram quarreled daily with Lot on account of this, but Lot would not listen to Abram. And he continued to do the same. And the inhabitants of the land came and told Abram. And Abram said unto Lot, "How long will you be to me for a stumbling block with the inhabitants of the land? Now I beseech you, let there be no more quarreling between us, for we are kinsmen. But I pray you separate from me, and go choose a place where you may dwell with your cattle and all belonging to you, but keep yourself at a distance from me, you and your household. And be not afraid in going from me, for if anyone do any injury to you, let me know, and I will avenge your cause from him. Only remove from me." And when Abram had spoken all these words to Lot, then Lot arose and lifted up his eyes toward the plain of Jordan. And he saw that the whole of this place was well watered, and good for man, as well as affording pastures for the cattle. And Lot went from Abram to that place, and he there pitched his tent, and he dwelt in Sedom, and they were separated from each other. And Abram dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Chevron, and he pitched his tent there, and Abram remained in that place many years. And we move to page 328. There is a side note here, what's coming up. It says, 4 kings with 800,000 men war against Sedom and the cities of the plain, and destroy and plunder their people. Abram, hearing that Lot is taken captive, gathers together about 300 men and pursues the kings, retakes the captives, and smites the whole army of the Confederate rings. On his return, Abram meets Adoni-Sedek, king of Yerushalayim. The same was Shem. Abram gives tithing of all he had taken to Adoni-Sedek, and is blessed of him. Abram restores to every man his property which he had retaken in the war, and returns to Chevron. Yehusha again appears to Abram and promises to bless him with a numberless posterity. Sarai, being childless, gives Hagar to Abram for a woman, and becoming jealous of her, afflicts her. An angel comforts Hagar. Yishmael is born. Okay, this is going to be pretty exciting. So 300 men are going to take on 800,000 men in a war. That's a biggie. Here we go. Chapter 16, page 328, the Sefer book of Jasher. At that time, Kedorlaomer, king of Elam, sent to all the neighboring kings, to Nimrod, king of Shinar, who was then under his power, and to Tidal, king of nations, and to Arioch, king of Elachar, with whom he made a covenant, saying, "Come up to me and assist me, that we may smite all the towns of Sedom and its inhabitants, for they have rebelled against me these 13 years. And these 4 kings went up with all their camps, about 800,000 men. And they went as they were, and smote every man they found in their road. And the 5 kings of Sedom and Amorah, Shinaf, king of Admah, Shemever, king of Sevoim, Bera, king of Sedom, Bersha, king of Amorah, and Bela, king of Soar, went out to meet them, and they all joined together in the valley of Siddim. And these 9 kings made war in the valley of Siddim, and the kings of Sedom and Amorah were smitten before the kings of Elam. And the valley of Siddim was full of lime pits. And the kings of Elam pursued the kings of Sedom, and the kings of Sedom with their camps fled and fell into the lime pits, and all that remained went to the mountain for safety. And the 5 kings of Elam came after them and pursued them to the gates of Sedom, and they took all that there was in Sedom, and they plundered all the cities of Sedom and Amorah. And they also took Lot, Abram's brother's son, and his property, and they seized all the goods of the cities of Sedom, and they went away. And Eunuch, Abram's servant, who was in the battle, saw this, and told Abram all that the kings had done to the cities of Sedom, and that Lot was taken captive by them. And Abram heard this, and he rose up with about 318 men that were with him. And he that night pursued these kings and smote them, and they all fell before Abram and his men. And there was none remaining but the 4 kings who fled, and they went each his own road. And Abram recovered all the property of Sedom, and he also recovered Lot and his property, his woman and little ones, and all belonging to him, so that Lot lacked nothing. And when he returned from smiting these kings, he and his men passed the valley of Siddim, where the kings had made war together. And Bera, king of Sedom, and the rest of his men that were with him went out from the lime pits into which they had fallen to meet Abram and his men. And Adoni-Sedek, king of Jerusalem, the same was Shem, went out with his men to meet Abram and his people with bread and wine, and they remained together in the valley of Melech. And Adoni-Sedek blessed Abram, and Abram gave him a tenth from all that he had brought, from the spoil of his enemies. For Adoni-Sedek was a priest before Elohim. Biggie. And all the kings of Sedom and Amorah who were there with their servants approached Abram and begged him to return them their servants, whom he had made captive, and to take unto himself all the property. And Abram answered the kings of Sedom, saying, As Yehusha lives, who created heaven and earth, and who redeemed my soul from all affliction, and who delivered me this day from my enemies, and gave them into my hand, I will not take anything belonging to you, that you may not boast tomorrow, saying, Abram became rich from our property that he saved. For Yehusha Eloi, in whom I trust, said unto me, You shall lack nothing, for I will bless you to all the works of your hands. And now therefore, behold, here is all belonging to you, take it and go. As Yehusha lives, I will not take from you, from a living soul down to a shoe tie or thread, excepting the expense of the food of those who went out with me to battle, as also the portions of the men who went with me, Anar, Ashkal, and Mamre, they and their men, as well as those also who had remained to watch the baggage. They shall take their portions of the spoil. And the kings of Sedom gave Abram according to all that he had said, and they pressed him to take of whatsoever he chose, but he would not. And he sent away the kings of Sedom, and the remainder of their men, and he gave them orders about Lot. And they went to their respective places. And Lot, his brother's son, he also sent away with his property, and he went with them. And Lot returned to his home to Sedom, and Abram and his people returned to their home in the plains of Mamre, which is in Chevron. At that time, Yehusha again appeared to Abram in Chevron, and he said to him, Do not fear. Your reward is very great before me, and I will not leave you until I shall have multiplied you and blessed you and made your seed like the stars in heaven, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And I will give unto your seed all these lands that you see with your eyes. To them I will give them for an inheritance forever. Only be strong and do not fear. Walk before me and be perfect. And in the 78th year of the life of Abram, in that year died Reu, the son of Peleg. And all the days of Reu were 239 years, and he died. And Sarai, the daughter of Haran, Abram's woman, was still barren in those days. She did not bear to Abram either son or daughter. And when she saw that she bore no children, she took her handmaid, Hagar, whom Pharaoh had given her, and she gave her to Abram, her man, for a woman. For Hagar learned all the ways of Sarai, as Sarai taught her. She was not in any way deficient in following her good ways. And Sarai said to Abram, Behold, here is my handmaid Hagar. Go to her, that she may bring forth upon my knees, that I may also obtain children through her. And at the end of 10 years of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, which is the 85th year of Abram's life, Sarai gave Hagar unto him. And Abram hearkened to the voice of his woman Sarai, and he took his handmaid Hagar, and Abram came to her, and she conceived. And when Hagar saw that she had conceived, she rejoiced greatly, and her mistress was despised in her eyes. And she said within herself, This can only be that I am better before Elohim than Sarai my mistress. For all the days that my mistress has been with the Lord, she did not conceive. And that's a lowercase l on Lord. But me, Yehusha, has caused in so short a time to conceive by him. And when Sarai saw that Hagar had conceived by Abram, Sarai was jealous of her handmaid. And Sarai said within herself, This is surely nothing else but that she must be better than I am. And Sarai said unto Abram, My wrong be unto you, for at the time when you did pray before Yehusha for children, why did you not pray on my account, that Yehusha should give me seed from you? And when I speak to Hagar in your presence, she despises my words, because she has conceived, and you will say nothing to her. But Yehusha judge between me and you for what you have done to me. And Abram said to Sarai, Behold, your handmaid is in your hand. Do unto her as it may seem good in your eyes. And Sarai afflicted her. And Hagar fled from her to the wilderness. And an angel of Yehusha found her in the place where she had fled, by a well. And he said to her, Do not fear, for I will multiply your seed. For you shall bear a son, and you shall call his name Yishmael. Now then, return to Sarai your mistress, and submit yourself under her hands. And Hagar called the place of that well Beer Lahai Roi. It is between Kadesh and the wilderness of Bered. And Hagar at that time returned to her master's home, her master's house, and at the end of days Hagar bore a son to Abram, and Abram called his name Yishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when he begat him. And the next note for coming up is Yehusha appears to Abram and establishes the covenant of circumcision, and he calls his name Avraham, and Sarai he calls Sarah. Chapter 17, 329 page in the book of Jasher Sefer. And in those days, in the 91st year of the life of Abram, the children of Kittaim made war with the children of Tubal. For when Yehusha had scattered the sons of men upon the face of the earth, the children of Kittaim went and embodied themselves in the plain of Canopia, and they built themselves cities there and dwelt by the river Tibro. And the children of Tubal dwelt in Tuscana, and their boundaries reached the river Tibro. And the children of Tubal built a city in Tuscanan, and they called the name Sabina, after the name of Sabina, son of Tubal, their father, and they dwelt there until this day. And it was at that time the children of Kittaim made war with the children of Tubal. And the children of Tubal were smitten before the children of Kittaim. And the children of Kittaim caused 370 men to fall from the children of Tubal. And at that time the children of Tubal swore to the children of Kittaim, saying, You shall not intermarry amongst us, and no man shall give his daughter to any of the sons of Kittaim. For all the daughters of Tubal were in those days fair, for no women were then found in the whole earth so fair as the daughters of Tubal. And all who delighted in the beauty of women went to the daughters of Tubal and took women from them. And the sons of men, kings and princes who greatly delighted in the beauty of women, took women in those days from the daughters of Tubal. And at the end of 3 years, after the children of Tubal had sworn to the children of Kittaim not to give them their daughters for women, about 20 men of the children of Kittaim went to take some of the daughters of Tubal, but they found none, for the children of Tubal kept their oaths not to intermarry with them. And they would not break their oaths. And in the days of harvest, the children of Tubal went into their fields to get in their harvest, when the young men of Kittim assembled and went to the city of Sabina, and each man took a young woman from the daughters of Tubal, and they came to their cities. And the children of Tubal heard of it, and they went to make war with them, and they could not prevail over them, for the mountain was exceedingly high from them. And when they saw they could not prevail over them, they returned to their land. And at the revolution of the year, the children of Tubal went and hired about 10,000 men from those cities that were near them. And they went to war with the children of Kittim. And the children of Tubal went to war with the children of Kittim to destroy their land and to distress them. And in this engagement, the children of Tubal prevailed over the children of Kittim. And the children of Kittim, seeing that they were greatly distressed, lifted up the children which they had had by the daughters of Tubal upon the wall which had been built to be before the eyes of the children of Tubal. And the children of Kittim said to them, have you come to make war with your own sons and daughters? And have we not considered your flesh and bones from that time till now? And when the children of Tubal heard this, they ceased to make war with the children of Kittim, and they went away. And they returned to their cities, and the children of Kittim at this time assembled and built 2 cities by the sea, and they called one Pertu, and the other Ariza. And Abram, the son of Terach, was then 99 years old. At that time, Yehusha appeared to him, and he said to him, I will make my covenant between me and you, and I will greatly multiply your seed, and this is the covenant which I make between me and you, that every male child be circumcised, you and your seed after you. At 80 days old shall it be circumcised. At 8 days old, 8 days, it shall be circumcised. And this covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And now therefore your name shall no more be called Abram, but Abraham. And your woman shall no more be called Sarai, but Sarah. For I will bless you both, and I will multiply your seed after you, that you shall become a great nation, and kings shall come forth from you. Coming up next time, Abram entertains 3 angels who eat with him. Sarah is promised a son, and the people of Sodom and Amorah and of all the cities of the plain become very wicked. I cannot wait to read that. Hey, we're done for now. We will see you next time on Yehusha's Glory. If you have any questions or comments, please do those questions and comments down below. I appreciate you coming and watching. Please subscribe and like the stories and share them with your friends. Ask Father for understanding as I read this. Put comments on the bottom and tell me what you like or don't like about the videos. It's going to be good to hear if this information is coming across to you in an understandable way. Let me know if I need to speed up or slow down. Let me know if I need to slow down through certain areas. Just let me know what you need. This is for you. What will make it easier for you? All comments always requested and appreciated. Father Yehusha, we ask that everybody listening to this video is blessed and protected by you and your wonderful son Yehusha. All right, well, we'll see you next time on Yehusha's Glory. Take care.